Dead Island 2 is a first-person action role-playing game that was actually first announced in 2014 as a sequel to the popular game Dead Island. However, the development of Dead Island 2 has been fraught with setbacks, delays, and controversies, leading to what can be described as a development disaster. So, in this video, we'll be discussing the development disaster of Dead Island 2. Let's waste no more time and let's get straight into it. Dead Island 2 was initially being developed by Jaeger Development, but the company was later dropped from the project in 2015 due to creative differences with the publisher Deep Silver. After this, the development of the game was handed to Sumo Digital, but they too were later dropped from the project in 2019. Since then, the game has been passed on to a number of other studios, including Dambuster Studios, and as of 2023, when we're about to get the game, Dambuster Studios are still the ones developing the game, and there has been a significant amount of progress made towards this development, and the game is actually about to release. The constant changes in development studios have been a significant factor in the Dead Island 2 development disaster. Each new studio that takes on the project has had to start from scratch and try to make sense of the work done by the previous studio. This means that a lot of time and resources are wasted and the progress is really slow. Additionally, each new studio may have its own vision for the game, which can lead to conflicts with the publisher or other stakeholders. This lack of consistency and direction has been detrimental to the development of the game and has led to loads of frustration among fans. One of the major issues that did actually lead to Jaeger Development's departure from the project was a disagreement over the direction of the game. Jaeger wanted to make a game that was more focused on survival and horror elements, while Deep Silver wanted a more comedic and action-packed game. This disagreement eventually led to Jaeger's departure from the project. This highlights the importance of having a clear vision for a game and making sure that all stakeholders are on the same page. When there is a lack of agreement on the direction of a game, it can lead to lots of delays, setbacks, and ultimately a cancellation of the game. So obviously, due to Jaeger Development's departure from Dead Island 2, this then led to lots of delays, and then later on Sumo Digital took over and they were then dropped as well by Deep Silver, and we now have Dambuster Studios, like we mentioned, that will be releasing the game very soon on the 21st of April. But it goes without saying that all of these changes in development studios have led to a real lack of inconsistency and direction in the game's development. Another factor that also massively contributed to the Dead Island 2 development disaster is the lack of clear direction for the game. The constant changes in development studios played a massive factor in this as well. The lack of clear direction for Dead Island 2 has also led to confusion among fans. When the game was first announced, it was marketed as a sequel to Dead Island, which was a first-person action role-playing game with survival and horror elements. However, as development did progress, it became unclear what was actually next for Dead Island 2. With the changes in development studios, it seemed like things could really change, as everything was just being done behind closed doors and none of the fans really knew what was truly going on. Now, the game is obviously finally back on track. It recently went gold, which means development is completely finished. So this does mean that obviously there shouldn't be any issues like this in the future, unless of course we get similar issues for DLCs, but it seems like things have worked when it comes to Dambuster Studios and Deep Silver. Deep Silver really weren't happy with the direction that Jaeger Development wanted to go in. They didn't like the idea of it being a horror game. Deep Silver wanted a more comedic effect with this game and just wanted it to appeal to more audiences, whereas, Jaeger Development wanted to just appeal to one specific niche of people, but obviously that is not what Deep Silver wanted, so they simply just sacked them off of the game development. They then did get Sumo Digital in to develop the game, and in 2019 they were also later dropped from the project, which is actually quite late on considering it's releasing in 2023. That only gave Dambuster Studios about 3 to 4 years to actually put development towards the game. We don't really know if they had to start from complete scratch or if they continued where Sumo Digital had left off, but I believe that Sumo Digital actually started from scratch after Jaeger Development were completely dropped and everything just started over again. Of course, the idea of a Dead Island 2 continued, but the actual ideas of the actual game itself didn't continue. This was all completely changed. What's interesting is that if they were to continue with Jaeger Development and had gone with their ideas, then we would have got Dead Island 2 ages ago. Chances are the graphics would have been nowhere near as good as they are now. Since the game was first announced in 2014, we could have got that in maybe 2017, and that would have been pretty insane to be getting it back then. It would have been a completely different game to what we will be getting now with Dambuster Studios. Hopefully, it will be a better game if we did it with Dambuster Studios than it would have been with Jaeger Development. Of course, we'll never really know the true answer to that, but hopefully we're going to be getting a good game on the 21st of April. It is pretty interesting to think that if it was to release back in 2017, now obviously Jaeger Development were sacked from the project in 2015, but if they were to release it with Jaeger Development, then we could have got a completely different game, like I mentioned, with way worse graphics and everything like that. But then in 2015, Sumo Digital took over, and they were then dropped in 2019, so they had quite a while with the game. They had 4 years. We don't really know what they did in that time. Maybe they started again in 2019. We don't really know that, but it's pretty interesting to think that all of these changes have been made and we are still getting this game. It's pretty crazy that it hasn't been completely cancelled. Deep Silver really wanted to push out this game. They just wanted to find the right development studio, which clearly wasn't very easy. But this isn't where the issues stop at all. There were then legal disputes. In 2016, the game's original publishers, Deep Silver, filed a lawsuit against Jaeger Development, claiming that they had breached their contract. This legal dispute may have contributed to the delays and setbacks in the game's development. Legal disputes can be time-consuming and costly, and this can delay the development of the game massively. We did see a bit of this with games like Cyberpunk 2077, and we saw it again in 2016 with Dead Island 2. Now, in 2016, Jaeger Development weren't actually part of Dead Island 2 anymore, since they were dropped from it in 2015. But clearly, it stuck with Deep Silver at how annoying they were with the development of the game, and then even when Sumo Digital had taken over in 2016, they still really weren't happy with Jaeger Development and filed a lawsuit against them even after they had finished developing the game. And the issues don't even stop there. There have also been many staffing issues. There's been reports of staffing issues with the various development studios that have worked on Dead Island 2. Some developers have left the project, and there have been reports of low morale and burnout among the team members. This can also contribute to delays in the game's development, as it can be difficult to find new team members to replace those who have left the project. Of course, if they're leaving for reasons like that, then it's not going to be very appealing to people looking to join. Now, of course, burnout and crunching down on developing the game is something we see with a lot of development studios. Luckily, it's something that we don't see as much of now, but of course, this was a while ago when it was quite common, unfortunately. So obviously, it looks like that was the case with Dead Island 2, which is never a good thing. It's never going to actually speed up the development. If staff are getting burnt out, then obviously that's not actually going to make anything quicker. If anything, if it does make it a quicker development, then obviously the game's probably not going to be quite as good. So a low morale and burnout among the team members is never going to be a good thing, and that will lead to future delays and just some minor setbacks. And that was everything that went wrong with the development of Dead Island 2. There were loads of constant changes in the development studios. There was a real lack of clear direction, many legal disputes as we mentioned, and there were also some staffing issues. All of that contributed to a very messy development timeline for Dead Island 2, and it's safe to say that it was a bit of a disaster. But on the 21st of April, we will be receiving the game on PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, Xbox Series X and S, Xbox One, and PC, as a brand new game that's looking really, really good, and we'll be getting that very shortly. The game has been in development for almost a decade, and it certainly shouldn't have taken that long. But even with that aside, we're still so close to getting Dead Island 2 now. So that does just about wrap up things here. Now, I have actually done a video where I go over everything we know so far about Dead Island 2, and if you're interested in watching that, then the link to that video is on the screen now, and you can go ahead and join me over there.